In the dry dock today is a passion project of mine, making the Star Trek The Next Generation communication badge used on a TV series which lasted 7 seasons. Can't wait to get stuck in. Although the original was sculpted by hand at a time before high definition was a thing back in the 80s, it seemed it would be a really simple, quick project for me to replicate. But that was until I purchased one that was taken from a mould of one of the originals. Where I found when I looked closer with a maker's eye, it's actually really complex. It's not symmetrical, the delta is not only raised but also has a curved profile, and the gold oval has a deep angled rim. Not to mention in what order the colours should be painted. My tool of choice is Fusion 360. First, I imported an image of the actual prop I found on an auction site into Fusion, which will be traced. As for scaling, I researched the dimensions of the prop from auction sites, specialist shops and fan-owned examples. However, over the 7 seasons of TNG, there was a massive variation in sizes by a few millimeters. So I chose to size mine within that range, which would look accurate as if it could be used in the Picard show in one of the dream sequences, and also look right if worn by a cosplayer. I recommend this as a great little project to start learning 3D digital modelling. It's just knowing the basics of tracing, extruding and then cutting bits out. That's all you really need to know. As I'm still learning digital modelling, I added material colours as a final render just for fun. But I also found that actually helps me gauge if it looks correct. But like many examples I've seen sold online, this is way too shiny, as the real props were matte. If they were this shiny, it would have been too reflective and an issue under studio lighting, and in my opinion, not to my taste when wearing it on my uniform. Okay, so the question you're probably asking yourself is, why am I making one for myself? Because there's plenty out there which are really good that I can buy, and plus I own one already, which is a copy from one that was used in Star Trek The Next Generation. So with my brief, in the latest TV series of Star Trek Picard, clearly Picard is in his brand new Star Trek Next Generation uniform made for this TV show. We don't really get a glimpse of the Comm badge, but I'm assuming they remade this Comm badge and it's really sharp and nicely done. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make a Comm badge as if Star Trek The Next Generation was made in 2020, not in 1987, I think it was first aired. And so that was my brief and that was my objective. During this process, I've learned that just because the digital model looks good on screen, it may not look correct in real life or translate well by the 3D printer. As it's a skill to work out the best proportions and orientation to print, which led to a load of failed attempts. So the solution I found that resulted in a good print with tight layer lines was printing it upside down, on its edge, rather than flat on a print bed, which gave me that result. So this turned out really well, and although 3D printing leaves behind a texture that looks like a vinyl record, it's pretty tight and won't need too much finishing. One of the well-known ways to get rid of print lines is to leave it in a box of acetone so the vapour slowly melts the surface. This is the same stuff used in nail polish remover. However, I found that at this scale it rounds off the super sharp edges I wanted preserved. So going old school was the way forward, painting it in filler primer and sanding it the old fashioned way. Although tedious, it got the best result. So those who actually got a 3D resin printer, you're probably asking, why did I just not print it on one of those? Because they're much better and ideal for this scale. Well, quite simply, I've only just started getting into 3D printing, and resin printers at the moment are super expensive, whereas this filament printer, the Ender 3, was only around about £200 on Amazon, and it was an ideal starter printer, and quite frankly it is superb for the jobs I need it to do for a hobby. Eventually I might get a resin printer, but for the sake of 30 minutes of filling and sanding, it's not too bad, and I'm quite proud of what it was able to achieve. Hitting it with grey primer helps check for imperfections. After testing, I added tiny gripping spikes to help the backplate stay in position on the cloth. Now I could just paint this, but as the studio version was cast in resin and also I wanted to make more of these, I decided to make a mould of it. Yes, I know I could print more, but it does take ages and I didn't want to go for the whole palaver of painting and sanding, especially as casting is so much faster. This is actually good working practice to do for PLA 3D prints, as it's a great material for prototyping but a little bit too brittle for everyday use and can shatter if it was a bigger object and it was dropped. For a more detailed tutorial on how to make a simple mould and cast, I've already made a video on this channel and I've included the link below, and also appearing somewhere on this video as a pop-up card. To add magnets embedded in the badge, I wanted to avoid making a two-part mould, so I was advised just drill the holes, but just make them shallow enough to insert the magnets. So I made a template that accurately mirrors the backplate magnets, and purchased a flat head drill bit that's the same diameter as the magnets, and that worked a treat. I found that having 2 points to secure the magnet helped prevent it from rotating as I went about my business doing Starfleet officer stuff. The difficulty of painting was doing it in the right order, especially as I wanted to airbrush it, which meant masking and layering the paint. I find that black paint is a good base colour to use for metallic paint. Then it was a matter of laying down the aluminium silver, masking it and then painting the gold. This gold is slightly brighter than the studio prop, but unlike the studio prop that was designed to be under intense studio lights which revealed a rich deep colour, I wanted that effect when wearing it outdoors under normal lighting conditions. Lastly, it's retouching the black edges and tidying up. To add depth and detail to this, I thought it would be a really nice touch to personalise the back. To give it that bling factor, I printed this on metallic self-adhesive sheet that's designed for inkjet printers.